The year was 2147, and the Orion Spur was no longer the frontier it once was. Humanity had spread like mold across 100 systems, trading, colonizing, and occasionally shooting at one another over mining rights. The interstellar concord kept the peace, mostly through a combination of bureaucracy and overwhelming firepower. Out on the rim, though, things were looser. Stations like Epsilon Drift floated in the dark between stars, neutral ground where smugglers, exiles, mercenaries, and the merely unlucky rubbed shoulders in recycled air. Jax Harlan was one of the unlucky ones. He'd been a shuttle pilot for Concorde Survey until a miscalculated jump fried his NAV computer and dumped him 3 light-years off course with a hold full of perishable medical isotopes. By the time he limped into Epsilon Drift, the cargo was worthless, his license was suspended pending inquiry, and his credit balance hovered just above absolute zero. For the past 6 months, he'd survived doing odd jobs, hauling scrap, running messages, occasionally flying discreet packages for people who didn't ask his name. Jax was 29, lean from too many low-calorie rations, with dark hair that refused to stay regulation length and hazel eyes that had seen too many things go wrong. He told himself he was biding his time until he could buy a new NAV core and get back to legitimate work. Mostly, he drank recycled synth beer in the lower decks and tried not to think about how far he'd fallen. On the night everything changed, Jax was threading his way through the crowded Level 9 bazaar. The air smelled of ozone, fried protein, and a dozen alien spices. Holographic signs flickered in languages he couldn't read. A 4-armed Croth vendor waved skewers of something that still twitched. Jax kept his head down, hands in the pockets of his worn flight jacket, heading for Dock 17 where a shady contact owed him 50 credits for delivering a sealed box he definitely hadn't looked inside. The crowd surged. Someone shouted in guttural Vorthi. Jax sidestepped a floating cargo pallet and turned down a narrower corridor lined with dimly lit stalls. That was when it happened. He didn't see her until it was too late. One moment the passage ahead was clear, the next a tall figure in a long black coat stepped backward out of a doorway, directly into his path. Jax tried to stop, boots skidding on the metal deck, but momentum carried him forward. His shoulder clipped her hip, and his hand, flailing for balance, landed squarely on the curve of her backside. Time froze. The woman turned with inhuman grace, coat swirling like liquid shadow. She was tall, easily 6'4", with skin the color of moonlit porcelain and hair the shade of fresh blood cascading to her waist. Her eyes glowed faintly violet, pupils slit like a cat's. Elegant, aristocratic features sharpened into something predatory as those eyes fixed on him. The corridor noise faded to a distant hum. Jax yanked his hand away as if burned. Heat flooded his face. Sorry. Crowd pushed me. Didn't mean. Her lips curved, revealing just the tips of elongated canines. When she spoke, her voice was low, melodic, and edged with frost. You're very brave, human, she said. Or very foolish. Most beings would have taken greater care not to touch me uninvited. Jack swallowed. Up close, she was stunning in a way that made his chest tight. Not human beautiful, something colder, more perfect. The faint luminescence of her skin suggested genetic tailoring far beyond anything Concorde allowed civilians. And those teeth. He took an involuntary step back. Really, it was an accident. I'll just go. She tilted her head, studying him like a specimen. No, she decided. You'll come with me. Before he could protest, her hand closed around his wrist. Her grip was cool, unbreakable. Jax felt his pulse hammer against her fingers. She pulled him through the doorway she'd emerged from into a private booth sealed by a shimmering privacy field. Inside, the noise of the bazaar vanished. Plush seating ringed a low table. The air smelled faintly of copper and winter roses. She released him and gestured to a seat. Sit. Jax sat, mostly because his legs decided they were done supporting him. Look, lady, I'm sorry about the collision. But I've got places to be. I am Lady Vespera Noctis of House Noctis, third daughter of the Eternal Court of Nixera. She poured dark liquid from a crystal decanter into 2 glasses. And you have just committed a grave offense under our ancient laws. Jax's stomach dropped. Nyxera. He'd heard whispers. A reclusive species from the galactic core, humanoid but not human. Long-lived. Nocturnal. Rumors said they drank blood, not metaphorically. The Concord classified them as protected observers, which was diplomat speak for don't piss them off. I didn't know, he said weakly. Honest accident. Vespera handed him a glass. Drink. He stared at the liquid. It looked like red wine, but smelled metallic. Is this? It will not harm you. Yet. Her smile widened. It is merely custom to share sustenance before discussing reparations. Jax drank. It tasted like iron and black cherries, warm going down. His head buzzed pleasantly. Reparations? By Nyxeran law, unauthorized physical contact with a noble, particularly of an intimate nature, demands either immediate execution or binding service until the debt is repaid. She sipped her own glass, watching him over the rim. Execution is efficient, but dull. Service, however, can be entertaining. Jax set the glass down carefully. Define service. You will accompany me for 1 Nyxeran cycle, approximately 90 of your standard days, as my personal attendant. You will obey without question. At the end, if you have pleased me, the debt is forgiven and you go free with compensation. If you displease me, she shrugged delicately.
Well,
you'll die human. He laughed nervously. You're joking. Her expression didn't change. I do not joke about blood debts. Jax looked at the privacy field, calculating escape. She followed his gaze. I wouldn't, she advised. The field is one way, and I am faster. He believed her. Something about the way she moved, fluid, predatory, screamed apex hunter. 90 days, he repeated. Doing what exactly? Whatever I require. Her eyes gleamed. Within reason. I am not a monster. The irony was not lost on him. Jax weighed his options. He had 50 credits coming if the contact didn't stiff him, debts of his own and no real ties. 90 days wasn't forever. And the compensation she mentioned might get him that new NAV core.
Fine, he said.
But I want the terms in writing. Concord's standard contract. Vespera's eyebrows rose. Bold. I like that. She produced a thin holopad from her coat and dictated terms in perfect Concord legalese. Jax read them twice. They were surprisingly fair, no permanent harm, no sexual obligations unless mutually agreed, compensation of 200,000 credits upon satisfactory completion. He signed with a shaking stylus. Excellent.
She stood.
We leave immediately. My ship is docked at VIP berth 3. Jax followed her out of the booth, past curious stares in the bazaar. No one interfered. House Noctis apparently carried weight even here. Her ship was sleek obsidian, all smooth curves and no visible engines, Nyxeran tech far beyond human understanding. Inside, corridors glowed with soft bioluminescence. Crew members, pale, violet-eyed, uniformly gorgeous, bowed as Vespera passed. Jax felt like a scruffy dog dragged into a palace. She showed him to quarters that were larger than his entire apartment back on Terra Nova. You will dine with me at 8th hour. Attire is provided. She indicated a wardrobe already stocked with clothing in his size, black silks and leathers that somehow fit perfectly. How did you? I took measurements while you were unconscious after drinking. He touched his neck instinctively. No bite marks. I said within reason, she reminded him, amused.
Rest.
We jump in 6 hours. The first weeks were a blur of new routines. Nyxeran days were 32 hours long, their nights longer. The ship ran on eternal twilight. Jax learned to navigate the dim corridors, to serve Vespera's preferred beverage, synthetic hemoglobin enriched with trace minerals. She assured him no sentient donors were involved these days, and to anticipate her needs. She was centuries old, she let slip one evening. Born before humanity reached Luna. Her people had watched Earth from afar, intervening only when necessary to prevent self-destruction. They fed on life essence, yes, but modern Nyxerans used cultured sources or willing donors in ritual contexts. The vampire myths were human projection, exaggerated over millennia. Jax found himself fascinated despite the circumstances. Vespera was brilliant, conversant in quantum mechanics, ancient history, music, and strategy. She played a stringed instrument that sang like starlight and beat him consistently at 3D chess. She also had a dry, cutting wit that surfaced when he did something particularly human. One night, as he poured her drink, she asked, "Do you regret your clumsiness yet?" He paused.
Sometimes.
"But this isn't what I expected." "What did you expect? Chains? Coffins?" She laughed, a sound like wind chimes in vacuum. "Something more gothic." Disappointed. Relieved, mostly. Their conversations deepened. He told her about growing up on a colony world, learning to fly before he could drive ground vehicles, the thrill of first solo jump. She spoke of Nixera's eternal night cities, crystal caverns lit by bioluminescent fungi, the loneliness of immortality. He noticed she never fed in front of him. When the cultured supply ran low during a long jump, she grew pale, movement sluggish. Jax offered his wrist without thinking. She stared. "You would do that? You said willing donors are acceptable. It has been centuries since someone offered freely." Her fingers brushed his pulse point, cool and gentle. "But no,
Not yet.
the debt is not so great." The moment hung between them, charged. They reached the Nixeran frontier world of Vel's shadow 6 weeks into his service. Vespera had business with the Eternal Court, something about succession disputes among the houses. Jax accompanied her planetside, dressed in formal House Noctis attire that made him feel like an imposter. Vel's shadow was breathtaking. No sun ever rose. Instead, vast auroras danced across the sky, powered by the planet's intense magnetic field. Cities were carved into black crystal mountains, lit from within. The air tasted of ozone and night-blooming flowers. At court, politics were lethal ballet. Rival houses schemed openly. Lord Cashin of House Eclipse, a tall male with silver hair and cruel eyes, took immediate interest in Vespera's human pet. "A blood debt?" he sneered during a banquet. "How quaint. And how temporary. Humans break so easily." Jax kept his mouth shut, but his fists clenched under the table. Vespera's hand rested lightly on his arm. "Some humans are sturdier than they appear, Cashin. Care to test yours against mine?" Cashin backed down, but the threat lingered. That night, in her chambers, Vespera paced. "Cashin seeks to challenge my position. If he succeeds, my allies fall. Civil war among houses could spill into Concord space." "What do you need me to do?"
She stopped.
"There is a ritual. The trial of binding. If a servant voluntarily offers essence to seal a noble's power, it strengthens them against challengers. But it requires true willingness, no coercion." Jax understood. "You need blood. More than that.
Trust.
Consent. A bond." He rolled up his sleeve without hesitation. "Then let's do it." The ritual was intimate, ancient. In a chamber lit only by aurora light filtering through crystal walls, Vespera knelt opposite him. She explained every step. When her fangs pierced his vein, there was sharp pain, then warmth spreading like brandy. Images flashed, her memories of starless skies, lost lovers, centuries of solitude. He saw her fear, that immortality was endless isolation. When she drew back, eyes glowing brighter, a faint mark remained on his wrist, 2 crescents that shimmered violet. Strength surged through her. Color returned to her cheeks. "It is done," she whispered. "Thank you, Jax." The trial came 3 nights later. Cashin challenged her formally in the court arena, an amphitheater of black glass. The rules were simple. First to yield or drain lost. No killing. Vespera moved like moonlight on water. Cashin was stronger, older, but the ritual bond lent her speed and resilience. Jax watched from the observer gallery, heart hammering. When Cashin lunged, fangs extended, she twisted aside and struck. Precise, controlled. Essence flowed from him to her, weakening him. The crowd murmured. No one had seen such power from third daughter in centuries. Cashin yielded, kneeling, defeated. House Noctis rose in influence. Vespera's position secured. In the aftermath, during the celebration, she found Jax on a balcony overlooking the endless night. "The 90 days are nearly ended," she said quietly. He nodded.
Yeah.
"You are free to go. The compensation transfers tomorrow. A shuttle will take you to any Concord port." Jax stared at the Aurora. "And if I don't want to go?" Vespera stilled. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying 90 days wasn't enough." He turned to her. "I'm saying I've seen your world, and I want to see more of it. With you. Not as a servant. As whatever this is." She searched his face. "Human's age. I do not. I know. You would grow old while I remain. I'd rather have 50 years with you than 500 alone." Vespera stepped closer. "There are ways. Rituals. Bonds that extend life, though never indefinitely. I'll take whatever time we get." She touched the mark on his wrist, now mirrored by one on her own. "Then stay. Not as repayment. As partner." Jack smiled. "Partner sounds good." Much later, when the auroras painted the sky in violet and emerald, they stood together on that balcony. He no longer flinched at her cool touch. She no longer hid her hunger or her heart. The clumsy accident in a crowded corridor had become the beginning of something neither species' history had quite prepared them for, a human and a Nixeran vampire, bound not by debt or ritual, but by choice. And somewhere, in the recycled corridors of Epsilon Drift, people still told the story, usually with exaggerated gestures and laughter, of the idiot human who bumped into Lady Vespera's and somehow lived to tell about it. They never got the ending right.